Hi, today we're going to go over student data overview, and it's for Peachtree Elementary School, and it is for classroom teachers. The purpose of this data overview is to analyze Peachtree Elementary School CRCT data results for the past 5 years, and we're going to look to identify trends in our historical data. We'll also be looking for our strengths and weaknesses in reading, language arts, math, science, and social studies for grades 3 through 5. Our discovery, diving into our data. Here is our demographics. As you can see from the data that our population has continued to steadily grow over until 2015, which was our phase 1 in redistricting, where we lost about 200 students. And next year we'll lose about, we'll actually have about 900 students, which will be a huge change for our school. And I think that the decrease in the population will have a huge positive impact on our school. As you can see from the first peak in each year, that we're continuing to lose our Caucasian students. Here is their data, where you can see that the peaks are falling. Our African American students, and our Hispanic students make up the majority at our school. The trend is that we have more boys than girls. Title I free and reduced lunch. We are a Title I school, and what that means is that our school has at least 40% who qualify for free and reduced lunches, which means that we qualify for federal funding. And over the years, we've lost a percentage point or so, but we still have quite a few students who are below the poverty line. And this year we have 79% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. Their attendance. This is the average of attendance at Peachtree Elementary School versus GCPS, and we are at 95.8 this year, and GCPS is 96.5, so we're not doing too terribly badly, and we're right on the right track. Transiency. This is important because our students do not stay. They typically don't start with us and stay with us. Our students move to different schools quite often, and our transiency rate is 84, which is quite high. So now that we understand our demographics and who our children are, we're going to start looking into the data and diving into their achievements. Here is third grade CRCT for reading. And although third grade didn't meet the county or the state's numbers for reading, they are making steady gains. And in the last year, third grade did beat the state's average by a point. And you can see that right there, 144, or 844, sorry, and 843 is the state's average. For language arts, the third graders consistently scored lower in language arts in both the county and the state, except for the last year, where they were able to surpass the state level. For third grade in math they made some gains the first year, lower in the following year, and then in 2011 and 12, they did well and they beat the state's average. You can see they got 846 versus the 841. For science, they did fairly well. In 2012, it was a really good year for third grade students. As you can see that they were at 837 and 833 for the state. But they were either right neck and neck with the state, so they did a really good job. For social studies is something that they were obviously taught very well, and that the students really were able to apply their knowledge on the CRCT. Each year, third grade made large gains and got higher scores than the state's average. And you can see right there where they're almost within GCPS average as well. So for the third grade summary, that the strengths that we talked about is math routinely meets and exceeds the state's average. Social studies was usually above state standards. Reading was making steady gains. Their weaknesses, every subject area ranked below GCPS average, and there are very minute changes in the average scores from year to year. Fourth grade. This is their fourth grade reading for CRCT. We're right at or above the state average. You can see that they tied the state right there. They're a little above. They tied them again. They're 1 point below, and they tied them again. This is for language arts. Language arts, they're right at or above the state's average as well. They're just kind of neck and neck, as you can see right there. For math, you can see the numbers. They met or exceeded the state standards. They were relatively close with GCPS here as well. Science scores for fourth grade were above state's average 2010 through 2011. They did a great job, where they surpassed the state. For social studies, fourth graders performed actually poorly on this social studies CRCT, which is surprising because third graders did so well. So you would think that some of that would also carry over. But the scores were well below the county and the state's average. So the summary that we talked about, their strengths, fourth grade met state standards for most of their CRCT subjects. Reading scores were slowly making gains. Weaknesses, social studies average scores were well below the GCPS and state averages, and all the content areas kind of trail behind the GCPS average. For fifth grade, here's fifth grade, their reading scores. Fifth grade made some gains each year in reading. They weren't too terribly behind. Here they're a little ahead, here they're a little ahead. They're just a point behind. So they're a point or two behind or above. For language arts, fifth graders met the standards in language arts. They steadily made improvements each year. So you can see here where they're above the standards. For fifth grade, this is in math. They did very well. They even surpassed the county's average in 2010 and 11, and they tied for the following year. For science fifth graders, it's interesting that fifth grade they did so well in math, but it didn't translate well into science. Both between 2011 and 13, they also had marked increases on their scaled scores, surpassing the state scores. So here that they were doing pretty low, and then here they made some gains. For social studies, they did fairly well in social studies where their scores were above the state's scores. Here they made some really good gains. And if they were below, it's by a few points. So the fifth grade summary that we had talked about, in language arts and math, scores were average higher scores than the state's average. 3 out of the 5 years, math was met or gone above the GCPS average. The weaknesses, science is consistently at or below the state's average, and 4 out of 5 of the content areas were consistently below GCPS average. Now, understanding all of that data, we want to get into groups, and we're going to discuss what strategies did we use for our areas of strengths, and then how can we replicate those strategies into our weaker areas. So go ahead and discuss that now.